Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending my session here on the surface selection tool. Thanks, Dale, for the nice introduction. And I'm going to get started. I think in your brochure, as you probably saw, that my presentation was on the surface selection tool. And that was it. For those of you that know me and seen some previous presentations, know I can't get through one without talking about grit. So I've added on a little section on the grit construction planning tool. So we won't cover everything in grit, but just that one layer. And we're going to be doing an overview on these things. So we won't be getting into a lot of detail. The outline for today, I wanted to just kind of talk about a road trip that I recently took a couple weeks ago from Fargo to Colorado Springs. Some interesting things happened that kind of relate to this presentation. And then I'll get into doing an overview of the surface selection tool. And we'll go and talk about how to make use of the tool and where to find it. And then we're going to go just a quick overview of grit. And we'll talk about the construction planning layer within grit. The construction planning data and information there is going to be very helpful, and it relates to this overall symposium. So it'll be good to cover that. And then we've added a new item to grit called pavement condition forecasting. And this is a new tool. It's been already introduced to production in grit, and it's available to Minnesota counties for now, and then we'll be adding the pavement condition data from North Dakota DOT from North Dakota soon to be added into that. Then we'll have some questions. I think we're going to run a little short on the presentation, so I might have plenty of time for questions when we're done here. So road trip to Colorado Springs. I guess starting out, just like it's kind of commonplace now with new technology that if you're going to be traveling somewhere, you're using the new technology, Google Maps, iPhone Maps, your car navigation, and you're putting in your trip that you want to go, and it's figuring out the very fastest way you can get there and the routes you can take to get there. These tools are picking the fastest route based on kind of recent traffic that's on the road, so it's kind of current information and how fast these vehicles are traveling. And then considering any paved roads and those current speeds, but not really anything else about the road. So this is what I found when we were traveling. I zoomed in here as soon as we got through kind of central Nebraska and turned into this area. Google Maps voice said, "Come take a right turn and travel on that road for the next 25 miles." So I turned on the road, and this is what I seen when I turned to the road. And no, Dale, it's not just a picture of the only tree in Nebraska. We're talking about the roads here. But I was kind of concerned right away. I pulled over to the side of the road, looking at the road. You could see, I could tell it was a county road. And you can see from the image that the road's kind of poor condition. It's probably an auto seal or a double seal coat on this road. It's not all that bad condition, but it's definitely a rougher road. There's no striping on the road. There's no shoulders on the road. I can't quite see that in the picture, but the inslopes are very steep, and different places they're even steeper yet. No signing anywhere on the road. There was a few curve signs for horizontal curves, but no reduced speed curve signs or anything. And then the curves, both vertically and horizontally, were very poor. So they were meant for very low speeds. And there was pavement edge drop-offs around and some potholes here and there. And it was just it was a road that when I saw it, I knew that I've seen this kind of road before, because I've designed and built a lot of those in Becker County and the county where I worked. But the but the thing about those roads, they were designed for very low traffic volumes and very low speeds, and for meant for local drivers that kind of know what's coming up on the road. So for that situation, it's perfectly fine. But if I'm traveling from Minnesota to Colorado and I'm being put on this road, it's probably going to have more traffic than what that was designed for. So yes, I pulled over and checked the Google Maps and had the kids jump on their iPhones to check the iPhone maps to see, is this really what it wants me to do? And both of them checked out. That was the road they put me on. I guess being adventurous and curious as to what the rest of the road looked like, I took off and drove through that road. We just kind of roughly counted cars, and based on that 30 miles, I kind of estimated there's about 1,000 vehicles a day on that road, which is way more than that was intended for. I guess why was this all so concerning, and kind of relates into this this presentation. Mapping technology like this is pretty much standard. Everybody uses it. It's very useful, and they're improving. Able to get more recent traffic speed data, and if there's storms or there's congestion on a certain route, it'll immediately route you to another route. And it's finding the fastest route, regardless of who owns it or what the safety conditions are on that road. And then this can change the ADT just kind of overnight for any county road. So it's not just this road in Nebraska. This could be any one of our county roads that were out there that, just because of technology and Google or somebody saying that this road is going to be the fastest route, it can add a whole lot of traffic to a road in a very short period of time. So that's just something that I think we need to start being aware of. And then this just creates major safety concerns. That road in Nebraska there, I can tell there's going to be a lot of crashes on that road with the traffic volumes that they're probably going to have on that. And who's responsible for that? I think this could be a whole presentation in itself and an argument, but is Google Maps responsible, or is the county? My opinion is the county is probably responsible for that road and making sure it's designed to handle the traffic and not be causing a lot of crashes. So I think more than ever, the counties really need access to planning and decision tools like what we're going to talk about, so that they can quickly respond to some of these challenges that we're facing today with new technology and how this routing is working. So I'm going to begin with talking about the need for the surface selection tool, and you can see there's a couple images here that you've probably seen in your counties before. We get a lot of complaints on these kind of roads. Sometimes they're not this bad, but other times, yes, they can be this bad. And what do we do with them? What do we do with these? It's really not acceptable for the drivers and the public out there. Do we just do more blading, add gravel? Do we put down dust control on the road? Do we auto seal or chip seal that road, or even pave that road? The thing we always seem to run into is never enough funding. We have a lot of gravel roads, and there just really can't be enough funding for all of that to improve them all. So I think just because of that funding shortage, it's even more critical that we really consider the costs to maintain those roads over a 20-year period, to factor into the decision on what you're going to do with the road. We really need to analyze the total life cycle costs, considering all the maintenance that you'll be doing on it, and the initial costs. So that's kind of where this tool comes into play, where we're looking at various levels of traffic. All those costs change depending on how much traffic is on the road, just like that one in Nebraska there, when they designed it and put it in, it was probably pretty low volume. So, but as that increases, there's just many more improvements that you need to do to the road, and the costs go up for maintaining it. So that's kind of there's different levels of traffic that you got to consider. There's a lot of options, and we've talked about some of them at the symposium already, and Dale's done a lot of work with trying to get information out on different types of options that you have to treat gravel roads, low volume roads, the autoseal, and improving the quality of the gravel and things like that. So we need to consider those different options rather than just going right to paving or some other option. Initial construction and all the maintenance costs need to be figured into the life cycle cost analysis. And then there are some other costs that you can consider, and we have options for that in the tools, which is, what are the agency costs and the, optional user costs. The cost to the user is probably higher on a gravel road than it is on a paved road. So we can factor that in with some of the options in the tool. So just an overview of the local road surface selection tool. It's basically a cost analysis tool for low volume roads, using life cycle cost and all the different types of improvements that I mentioned. This is developed with DOTC, the DOT Support Center. We have IT students that we hire. DOTC is a program within UGPTI where we're in close partnership with the North Dakota DOT, and we hire and give students, engineering students and computer science students, experience with real world projects with the DOT. So, but with that, we have the opportunity to work with those computer science students and develop applications like this. This is a web-based application. It's a free application. It's pretty easy to use, and people can just go to the website and click on the link. They don't have to download software or anything. And then the software is always up to date right on that web link. So, and then it's currently available to North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. The South Dakota had the original tool, which is just a spreadsheet that figured in costs and this information, and they actually wanted to work with us to update the tool and bring it into the web-based environment and update the costs and things in it. So that's what we did, and that's where it started. So any state can probably use it, but they would just have to pick one of the counties from within these states to use as an example to start. So the surface selection tool, starting out, it's kind of it just walks you through the whole analysis step by step. There's a next button down in here. Once you put your information in, you just click next and keep going through the different menus. So the first part of it is just selecting the state and the county that you're going to be working on. There's just a few menus across the top. The analysis is where we're at right now. There's an administration, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and help and contacts. So in analysis, first is just kind of some general setup where we can pick, there's default values already entered in for all the different costs and all the different treatments. They're based on regional level, where we had put in data at that kind of regional level. We break like North Dakota up into 3 regions, so western oil, and then the eastern part. And then there's also county level default values that can be used if the county has logged in and entered their own information in. Then they can always just use that data that's stored there and use that as their default. And then we can select which of these surface treatment types that you want to consider in the analysis. Hot mix asphalt, and this is of course low volume roads, so we're talking a real thin lift of asphalt, and asphalt surface treatments such as autoseals, double chip seal. There's gravel, gravel with dust control, gravel with stabilized gravel base, and you might not want to even consider asphalt or AST, and you might just pick the gravel and the dust control just to kind of see what's the difference in cost for those types of treatments. And then you can also decide if you want to include salvage value. That's after your analysis period. What it's 20 years? What's remaining life? And then the user costs, if you want to include those. I'm not going to go through those now. We're just going to talk about some of the basic information in here. Then there's some common parameters set up that we can do. And this is probably the most important one in here, is where we are picking the average daily traffic, the range. So it drops down ranges that you can pick, from 0 to 100, kind of in 100 increments up to around 600 ADT. So this one's just picking 300 to 399. You can set your discount rate, and you can also set some of the other values, like your analysis period. If you wanted to go out more than 20 years, you could go out to 30, 40 years, whatever you want to put in there, and that'll be the analysis period for it. So once we have that set up, then we are going into the analysis, and here's where we set up all the different cost parameters. And you can see as you go in here, the default values are already in there, so technically you don't have to really enter anything if you want to accept what's been put in there already as your default costs. So there's two sections in here. There's one for the maintenance costs over the life of the road, and there's one for the initial costs. And then you pick these little tabs up on top if you want to work with your hot mix asphalt, your AST, your gravel. In this case, we're looking at hot mix asphalt. So here's all the different maintenance items that you can be doing on a hot mix asphalt road. So we got crack sealing, seal coat, overlay, and then we put in, and the default value is in there, but if you want to change it, you can put in how many times a year you're doing this this treatment, and the year interval, the years in between the application. So crack sealing, we're doing it once a year, and about every 7 years you're doing a crack seal. Same with seal coating, and you usually start this after like the fourth year, and then the unit cost dollars per mile for that treatment is put in here. So it goes through crack sealing, seal coat, thin lift overlay, striping, patching, and maintenance. And then the next part you can do is go to the initial cost to where we have a calculator set up to figure out what those will be. And that is listed here. So we're just putting in for a road that has, about 480 T, what would be your thickness of asphalt that you would be putting in a new project. Typically that's around 4 inches, or it was for this default for this county. And then the cost of that, dollars per ton. So it's been about $60 per ton. The base thickness that you would need, and we're saying 6 inches, and then the base gravel cost, which is around $26 per ton. And then there's a few other items for reshaping, if you need to, reclaiming or milling of that asphalt surface, widening, and those things. And when you're all done, it calculates what that total cost per mile would be for the initial construction. Then you can move over and pick your other items. I've selected here dust control. So again, there's different maintenance items that happen. So you can have blading and regraveling, reshaping, cross-section, reapplying dust control. And then the times per year and the year interval again, and when you would start those treatments, and then the unit cost per mile. So again, the default values are there so that just the average county didn't have to go in and enter in all this data. But if you're in your county, you know that blading is costing you $200 per mile, you can go in and update it here, and then that'll be figured in your cost. So you can take it to whatever level you want. The results then, the output that we're getting is really the most important part here. We have outputs for the cost summary and a line chart, and I'll look at that here in a second. And then it also creates a PDF report of the analysis for outputs. So this is the primary output that we have, and this is telling you, what each of those different treatments is going to cost over 20 years, and the line charts are the total cost. So you can look at this and factor this into your decision. This isn't to tell you that you should pave this road or not pave this road, because there's a lot of other factors that counties need to consider when they're deciding that. But it does at least give you an informed decision that where you can take into account those costs. You can see at this traffic volume that over that 20 years that the bituminous is going to cost quite a bit more. But AST over 20 years, it does catch, it does come out in the end to be similar to what it is to just maintain that as a gravel road. And then the dust control and the stabilized base actually over the 20 years comes out to be a little bit less than just maintaining it as a gravel road. There's a little bit higher initial cost for those things, but because it saves on some of the maintenance that you have to do over the years, that it ends up costing a little bit less at this traffic volume. If I would have selected a really low volume, then more than likely the gravel would have been the least cost treatment that you would be considering on that. Again, you may still decide to pave this road, or you're probably getting a lot of pressure from constituents and the public that you should pave this road, and maybe you have the money right now, but you got to take into account that road in the long term is going to be costing you a lot more money. And then 20 years from now, when you don't have money again, you're going to have to be considering doing another overlay or another expensive project on it. So it's really important to consider these, rather than just jumping into, hey, okay, we'll pave that road. Well, that's going to be costing the taxpayers quite a bit more money than some of the other treatments that you may have wanted to consider. I won't go into this a lot just for time reasons, but we do have an admin section on this where a county and the state administrator, which is going to be UGPTI and LTAP is helping us with that, where we can enter in those default values for each of the different traffic ranges that we have. So, you pick each treatment and they all have the traffic range, and then, what's in there pops up, but you can then change it based on the average of what's happening in other counties, or leave it the same. But then whatever you enter in here is stored in our database, and that'll always pop up for that county or that region as the default value. So that's kind of makes it simpler to run this on many other counties. So we haven't had a lot of counties come in and enter these default values, but I am really encouraging you to speak with your counties and staff and see if they can find some time to log in. They could just contact us to get that information to log in, and then to go ahead and to update these costs and this information. So to find the surface selection tool, we're going to the UGPTI.org, the homepage, and we have a resources button here where we have other resources, and the surface selection tool is within there. So that's just the link. So it's right off the main page under resources. You'd find it, and that brings up this page here where we have the link to the surface selection tool. We have the technical report, and then we also have some of the other presentations that we've done. If you want to get into more technical detail, you can look at that. And while I'm here at the resources page, I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is GRIT, construction planning. So we can see here also under resources, there's a link for the geographic roadway inventory tool, GRIT. And again, that pulls up the page where you can get to the GRIT editor. We have map viewers where you can look at the data on web maps. Anybody can, you don't have to log in or anything for those. And then presentations, and there's help videos on here, and just to go through all the different layers. So I'm not going through any detail on this, just a real quick overview so you have an idea of what's there and available to you. So the Geographic Roadway Inventory Tool, or GRIT, that was again developed by UGPTI. It was for the need studies initially, so that we had a way for counties, an easy way for counties to enter in some of the data that only they would have, like, when was that road last paved and the thickness and that type of information really was needed and is needed now to continue to be updated for the need studies that we're doing to make them more accurate and to give us better results for that information. We also developed some custom web applications and map viewers with that. This program again was worked on with DOTC and our computer science students, and so it's not something we just buy off the shelf. This is completely custom developed from scratch, but developed to make it really easy to use. Web map based, it runs on Google Maps, so the mapping is all there, and the pictures here showing the GRIT web editor in the background here, and then the web map viewers in the foreground. But it's all just simple drop down menus that you select and enter in your information, and there's no cost for North Dakota County, so that's another bonus. In GRIT, there's 4 layers of information. I'm certainly not going to go through all the data items, but this is just listing the layers. We have construction history, which is what we needed for the needs study, like surface type and depth and all that information. And then the one I want to talk about today is construction planning, where we can enter in future projects, future plans that you have, and then they're all provided to the web maps and available to you for you to look at this information that is put in. We also have bridges and load restrictions and maintenance data, which I'm not going to cover, but again, they're on the website if anybody wants to take a look at that. So just within the construction planning layer, all the layers have these tabs that run across. For the first one is for the location information, where you just put in a begin point and end point of a project that you want to do, and it automatically draws it in, and then we can put in the rest of the information about that project by selecting the tabs that are listed here. So the next tab over is going to be the projects info tab, where we are putting in information for the type of project, the surfacing, whether it's bituminous or other, the thickness, and then most important part, the plan. When do you plan to do this? And we can put in then a status of the project, whether it's under construction or it's just planned and committed funding and other things like that. So the next tab, or further down, we have, the bid opening date and some other information, the cost and length and others. And then under the second tab over, we have public impact. So while it's under construction in the current year, we can, if the road's closed or if there's some other speed zones, reduced speeds or other information, that can be put in there. And then that information goes, whenever it's updated, it automatically goes to the web maps and available for the public to see kind of in real time what's going on with that road, if it's closed or if there's construction happening or what's going on with it. And then the last tab over, we can put in funding sources. So, and this is kind of important, where I think the legislators really would like to know where some of these, funding that we talked about, where it's being spent. So we can track that if this is legislative funding or from the OPD bill or whatever, we can put in information in here so that, again, on these web maps, we can see what the funding is that was used. So the other thing that has been on here, we have background layers, so we can turn on like what the pavement age is or what the pavement condition is. So these roads in red are 26 years or older, and the green are good roads, 0 to 5 years. So so when you're filling in your plan, you can be using this information. You probably want to consider projects where you got poor roads or where they're older, and that's really kind of the importance of all of this. Is when we're looking at pavement condition, we want to be looking at doing projects before they get to these these really poor conditions or really old, where you really have no choice but to do a really expensive reconstruction project. By being able to see this information, we can try to catch projects before they come to that point where that really expensive treatment is needed. And so that's where then the web map viewers come into play, and where we can come in here. It's pretty easily tool. There's all the data items that are in grid are in here in these layers, and you pick this button, and this is check boxes to turn them on and off. In this case, we have the pavement age for bituminous, if it's concrete or if it's AST, because that kind of makes a difference on how long their life will be. And then that's right over the top of the pavement conditions. So these roads where it's really got a lot of red on it, they're very poor condition roads, and that's probably what you want to be focusing on for projects and looking at those kind of roads to decide where you're going to do projects. So that kind of leads us to well, again, we can turn on other layers like the 5-year plan. Anything that's in the grid program, you can turn those on and off as colored layers on your map. That's available to you to help make decisions and see what's going on with the roads. But that comes into play where the new part that we've recently put into production. So you will see this here in grid now when the county logs in into the editing. But we don't have the pavement condition data in yet for North Dakota. We do have it for Minnesota, as this addition was really done through a Minnesota local road research board project that we were able to add this in, but it will be available for the North Dakota counties shortly as we will enter in the pavement condition data from the MEAD study that we collected. But within this section, we have a kind of a new section that's under construction history called performance. Within there, again, there's several tabs, and they're going to be showing you what the condition is, the first tab, and none of this data that has to be entered by the county. It's all automatically captured from the data collection that was taken, and from those databases, it's automatically put in here. The strength is automatically captured, the traffic, and then this future tab is where we can now select any year going out into the future for 35 years. Select that year, and it'll show you what that pavement condition will be in that year. It'll show you what the age will be, what the traffic will be, the cumulative yields, and all that information for whatever year you pick. So if you're working on a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan and you go out 10 years, you can pick 2030, and you will see what the condition for that particular section of road, which is selected here, will be. We can also turn on the background layers we've added, where we can select a year and it'll put the color-coded map of the pavement quality condition for that year on here. So I'm showing 2026, just thinking we're working on a 5-year plan. And so in 2026, these roads in red are going to be less than 2. Those are pretty poor roads, and really they're probably to a condition where they have to be reconstructed again. So you don't want to see a lot of that. You want to be working on the roads that are orange and some yellow, possibly, so that you can do, less expensive projects and catch them before they're totally deteriorated. So this gives you the ability to actually see out into the future when they're going to get to that condition. So you can make much more informed decisions on your 5-year plan. So that is one aspect of that performance forecasting. The other one is to look at some system-wide information. This case, for this county, we can go to the reports button now that's in here and select that, and we can select performance. We can do a PQ, pavement condition graph, or an age graph, but that's telling you the percentage of miles, of all your miles in your county, of your paved roads that are within certain ranges of pavement condition. So red being really pretty poor. So you can see for this county, they had about 15% in that poor, about 10% in the good condition, and then the rest is in the kind of poor fair condition. And so this the pavement condition forecasting is all based on whatever the county has put in to the construction planning layer. So if you put in a 5-year plan, those roads that you do get reset back to good. So you can kind of see then, out 5 years they're holding their own because there's projects entered into the 5-year plan. But then, after 5 years, they just haven't entered anything into the construction planning layer yet. So it really starts to drop off. So you can use this then to kind of set your goals for your county. What do you want to, when you want to have 10% of your roads in the in poor condition and the rest spread out between good and fair. Whatever those are, you can set those, and then as you add projects into your 5-year plan, these will adjust, and you'll see how you're going to be performing system-wide in future years. So, but again, that's kind of all dependent on what you put in to your 5-year construction planning layer and in your 5-year and future plans. All right, I would like to end this with a few items for you to consider, or some takeaways that you can bring back with you. First, with the surface selection tool for low volume roads, we just really like you to consider using this tool when evaluating your gravel road projects, particularly if they're more expensive projects where you're looking at possibly paving or dust control. Give the tool a shot just so that you can get some of those costs and take them into consideration when you're deciding what you want to do with those roads. And then also with that, if you are making some changes to some of the values, some of the default information that we have there, where you have to update the cost, we really want you to consider logging into our surface selection tool and updating those specific costs for your county. And that helps to make the averages better for us, for the regional default values, and even your local values are more up to date. Lastly, you may want to consider monitoring and considering sudden traffic volume changes. Like I talked about, these are things that kind of new with new technology, and they can happen to pretty much any county or even state for that matter, and cities where conditions change on state roads or higher roads and traffic gets shifted to local roads. And so it's just something to consider, monitoring that and making sure you consider that in some of your decisions. And then for grid construction planning, with the dedicated funding that we might have and with the existing dedicated funding, it's really good to build out a 5 to 10 year plan. And this grid construction planning really gives you the tools to be able to lay that out, to easily be able to select projects going into the future and decide, have that information to decide what you want to do 5, 10 years out. So it works really well for that. So we want to encourage you to try to build out into the future some of those plans. And then we have other data items in there, like the construction status, load restrictions, some of these data items that are time sensitive, that we want to get out in real time to the public. We need the counties to be going in there and making sure those are up to date when anything changes. If your project goes under construction, we should be logging in and taking care of that so that the correct information is provided to the public. And again, that's probably going to be going on to the North Dakota traveler information map. So, we're getting state information and county information all at the same location available to the public. So we really want to make sure that data is up to date. And as I said before, we will be working with LTAB staff to try to get out and work with the counties on a more regular basis and giving them a Teams call like this once a month to help them, or to just encourage them to update those data items that are time sensitive. And then lastly, I think the pavement condition forecasting tool that's a part of GRIT will be just a great asset for you to use, and that is coming soon. So will probably be available in later here in November. And that's just a matter of converting the data that we collected for road conditions that we collected for the whole state for the need study, converting that into the GRID system so it's available there automatically to the counties. Just a couple of information and resources. You can again see our UGPTI website at ugpti.org, and there's a tab in there for resources, and you can get the GRIT and the surface selection tool. Some email if you want to get a hold of myself or Kelly are listed here, and you can do that. And last thing, I really want to thank the North Dakota DOT for working with us and being a partner with us at DOTC and ATAC and our programs at UGPTI to help with local government and helping us to build these tools that can be made available to you at local government level. I think they're a tremendous asset for you to take advantage of. And lastly, I guess if we got any questions for either the local road surface selection tool or grid construction planning, I think we got a few minutes here left, and we're going to turn it over to Dale to moderate those questions. So thank you very much for attending this session.